Hi, my name is Tiki Ashud Diaz from BS Ed 1A, and now I'm going to tackle about the climate change adaptation strategies. But first, let's identify what is climate change. So, climate change refers to the long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Such shifts can be natural due to changes in sun's activity or large volcanic eruptions. Now, let's proceed to the primary causes of climate change. So, the primary causes of climate change is a human activity, particularly the burning of fossils like coal, oil, and gas. This releases large amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, trapping heat and causing the planet to warm. It says here about the primary causes of climate change is burning of fossils. Of course, because burning of fossils fuels like coal, oil, and gas releases large amounts of greenhouse gases, primarily carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases trap heat, leading to a warming effect and contributing to climate change. This warming effect causes a range of negative consequences, including rising sea levels, more extreme weather events, and disruptions to ecosystem. Next is the impact of climate change. So, climate change is the single biggest health threat facing humanity. Climate change impacts are already harming health through air pollution, disease, extreme weather events, forced displacement, pressures on mental health, and increased hunger and poor nutrition in places where people cannot grow or find sufficient food. Now that we all know the impact of climate change, we better stop this human activity like burning fossils, deforestation, mining, and etc. Next is climate adaptation. Climate adaptation is the process of adjusting to the effects of climate change, including current and expected impacts. The goal of climate adaptation is to reduce vulnerability to climate change and increase resilience. Yes, because climate adaptations is like getting ready for a change in weather. It's about making changes to our lives and communities to deal with the effects of climate change, like rising sea levels or more extreme weather events. This helps us become stronger and least likely to be harmed by the impacts of changing climate. For example, building sea walls to protect coastal areas from rising sea levels is a form of climate adaptation. Another example is developing drought-resistant crops to ensure food security in areas experiencing more frequent drought. Next is the importance of climate adaptation. Okay, climate adaptation is important because it helps people and the planet by reducing the negative effects of climate change. Because climate adaptation is like putting on a raincoat when it starts to rain. It helps us avoid getting soaked and stay comfortable even when the weather changes. In the same way, climate adaptation helps us avoid the worst effect of climate change by making changes to how we live and work. This makes us more resilient and able to cope with the challenges of a changing climate, protecting both people and also the planet. Next is adaptation. Adaptation can help people and places become more resilient to climate change by making them less vulnerable to its effect. Think of adaptation like making your house stronger to withstand a storm. With It's about taking steps to make people and places less vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. By adapting, we can build stronger communities, protect our resources, and be better prepared for the challenges of a changing climate. Next, mitigation. Mitigation is action to reduce greenhouse gas emission and limit the amount of warming our planet will experience. Example of mitigation is like kanang mag ride og bicycle. Dili man na siya maka-cause og kanang climate adaptation kay wala may malugwa nga kanang carbon dioxide or kanang walay mga aso na mugawas kay nagbike ra man ka. That's also a climate adaptation strategies. Okay, next, relocation as a climate adaptation. Okay, relocation, also known as planned relocation, is a climate adaptation strategy that involves moving people and communities away from areas increasingly vulnerable to climate change impacts, such as rising sea levels or extreme weather events. This strategy aims to minimize risk and protect lives and livelihoods by relocating to safer, more resilient locations. Example is coastal communities, extreme weather events, environmental degradation. So, ang relocation, wala siyang kanabitang kanang mubalis mo sa lain nga lugar, kanang kuan mo. Like, for example, kay nakapuyo man mo sa kanang coastal environment, doon mo sa kanang mga tubig para mas safe mo pag na magkuan po ng climate change. Mubalis mo sa lugar kung asa mas layo siya sa mas dili siya vulnerable og mga rising sea levels. Mao na siya ang relocation. Mubalis mo og lugar kung asa mas safe. Next is ang land use planning for climate adaptation. It's a process that helps communities prepare for and response to climate change. It involves identifying and managing areas that are vulnerable to climate-related hazards, such as floods, wildfires, and storms. The goal is to reduce the risk of this hazard and to make communities more resilient to climate change. So land use planning can help minimize climate risk and enhance resilience by first identifying and managing vulnerable areas. Second, encouraging sustainable land management practices, prioritizing green solutions. Third, balancing economic, social, and environmental values. And the last one is avoiding mismanagement and misuse of resources. Next is integrating relocation and land use planning. Integrating land use and relocation planning can help create sustainable cities by considering the impact of land use on travel demand and by relocating activities to more suitable locations. Imagine you're designing a city. Instead of just putting buildings wherever there's space, you think about how people will get around and how the city will be affected by climate change. That's what integrating land use and relocation planning is all about. It's it means making smart choices about where things go, like putting homes and businesses closer together to reduce car trips or moving activities away from areas that are vulnerable to flooding. This helps create cities that are sustainable, efficient, and resilient to challenges of changing climate. Next, challenges and barriers. Challenges and barriers to land use planning and relocation can include inconsistent plans. Inconsistent plans between urban and regional plans can cause by administrative boundary conflicts and lack of interdepartmental coordination. Next is insufficient funding. Lack of funding can lead to inadequate implementation of land use plans. Then, political interference. Political interference can be a challenge to land use planning also. Next, insecure and land tenure. Unclear or contested land tenure can limit a community's ability to implement land use strategies. Okay, next, lack of data. Lack of relevant and valid data can be a challenge to land use planning implementation. In developing countries, implementation of plan relocation can be a challenge also. Then next, zoning. Zoning barriers can include institutional factors like limited or no powers to transit agencies and local public agencies' opposition to granting powers. Next, urban design. Urban design barriers can include the need to move beyond the focus on street connectivity. Next is negative externalities. Negative externalities of land use include pollution and population displacement. Next is rural rural fringe areas. Rural fringe areas challenges in rural fringe areas include fragmented governments, lack of community vision, and rapid population growth. So, okay, that's the end of my discussion. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.